So our co-sponsors, here we go. So good evening and welcome, Ed Potasnik, New Jersey Executive Director for New Jersey LCV. I'm really happy to have you with us. I'm going to be the moderator tonight. I want to thank our co-sponsors, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, New Jersey Sustainable Business Network, Water Spirit, New Jersey chapter of Sierra Club, the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, and the Watershed Institute. As a reminder, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you could please change your name in the Zoom so that when you have your question answered, we'll be able to refer to you properly and we can attribute those questions to the folks that are asking it. We're here today to talk about something that affects every single one of us living in the state of New Jersey: how we build, how we live, and how we stay safe in the face of a changing climate. And there are real solutions to flooding, including Governor Murphy's NJPACT real rules. And that's what we're going to be discussing more in detail tonight. But first, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the devastating flash floods on Monday, which claimed 2 lives in New Jersey, as well as the ongoing tragedy that happened in the previous week in Texas. And we see this happening across the country. In North Carolina, we see it happening in our neighboring state of New York, California, fires, floods. But we're here tonight really to talk about the water that has been coming quickly, causing these sorts of flash floods or over an extensive period of many days of rain, which are inundating communities. These past couple of weeks are painful reminders of what climate change isn't, that it isn't something that's in the distant future. It's something that's here now. And the more and more that I'm speaking with people, folks are beginning not only to realize, but become frustrated with this new reality. It's already here, and we must adapt for the reality that is upon us. Outdated infrastructure simply can't keep up with this new normal. In fact, in New Jersey, most of our properties were built from our parents and our grandparents, former generations, when they didn't put in the kinds of flood protections that we needed. They didn't know that stormwater was going to be as big a problem. They didn't know New Jersey was going to be the most densely populated state in the nation. And there wasn't going to be any place for the water to be absorbed or held onto. And then it was going to flood their neighbors. So if we want to protect our neighborhoods, protect our drinking water, protect our economy, we need to invest in modern, equitable flood mitigation, as well as enforce some common sense regulations for future development in New Jersey. So we don't want to look back at a future disaster and then regret not doing more when we had the chance. And when hurricanes and Superstorm Sandy came, I kept saying, our goal at New Jersey LCV is to make sure it doesn't play out when a storm comes like this, because we know they will, like a TV rerun. And unfortunately, we're seeing these come up and up again in our social media feeds, on TV, and we're here to talk about how we can prevent that. Back in 2020, Governor Murphy made a bold and necessary commitment to protect New Jersey from accelerating impacts of climate change. The promise is called NJPACT, the New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threats. And today's conversation is focused on one of the most important parts of that effort, the REAL rules. And the REAL stands for Resilient Environments and Landscapes. These rules are based on the best available science. They take a practical, life-saving approach to development in our coastal and flood-prone areas. And the truth is, we know that sea levels are rising. And quite frankly, New Jersey is the fastest state to see sea level rise. It's rising the most here. And we know that storms are becoming more intense. And we know that unless we act, the most vulnerable among us, especially our low-income families and frontline communities, are going to suffer the most. Real doesn't mean don't build. It means build smart. It means if you're going to develop in a flood-prone area, it should be built to withstand 5 feet of sea level rise, because that's what we're realistically facing by the end of the century. And that's not extreme. That's actually the minimum. There are projections that we could see sea level rise that are higher than that. So ultimately, better construction leads to less destruction. And the destruction and devastation we saw in this last week and the weeks previous can be avoided with the proper approach to how we build. And let's not forget that every dollar that we invest in resilience will save $13 in disaster recovery. And these rules can save lives, reduce costs, and protect property, and promote equity. They'll help communities plan, businesses adapt, and families stay safe. So today we're going to walk through what these rules do, what the rules don't do, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and why your voice and understanding matters. Because climate resilience is not optional. It's the only path to a safe, sustainable New Jersey for ourselves today and future generations of tomorrow. We have an amazing partner and ally of New Jersey LCV in the state of New Jersey and the environmental movement. So let's get started. Joining us this evening is Jennifer Coffey. She's the executive director of the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, called NJPACT for short. Jennifer serves as a member of the New Jersey Water Supply Advisory Council and as an advisor to the New Jersey State Clean Water Council. She serves as a member of the Hamilton Township, which is in Mercer County Planning Board. She's president of the board of the Friends of the School of Conservation, is a member of the New Jersey Society of Women Environmental Professionals. She serves on numerous New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Advisory and Stakeholder Task Force for climate change, water quality, flooding, and equitable access to open space. And so, Jen, we're really pleased to have you with us. I know the NJPACT rules have been something that you've been working on for a long time, and your background in local municipal government, both through NJPACT and previous positions you had, put you well positioned to understand these land use decisions and how municipalities and developers and builders, homeowners kind of work to ensure that when we're building, that we're doing it in a way that is in alignment with our environment, and that environment also is protective and not destructive to the people and the families and businesses that are going to dwell and live and enjoy the housing or business for that matter. So with that, I turn it over to you. I know you've got a PowerPoint. For folks that are watching, if you have questions at any time, we're going to use the Q&A feature. You just click at the bottom, Q&A, type up your question. And when we get through with the presentation period, we'll move into questions. Again, make sure your name is as accurate as possible. So we'll refer to you, you know, we're talking about you rather than someone else who happened to be using the computer before you. Jen, thanks so much again for being here. And we look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate that introduction. And it's my pleasure to be here tonight with you and everyone here at LCV. I want to thank Randy and Cheryl from NJPACT staff. They're here as well. And we have a number of NJPACT Advisory Council members. I see John and Kathy Thonay here, Lee Farnham. So thank you for joining us. I know we've got quite a number of EC members here with us today. So some of you already know what NJPACT is, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. We are really a resource organization. We're a 501c3, and we provide resources to the more than 5,000 environmental commissioners in about 350 communities across the state of New Jersey. We have a quarterly magazine. We have educational programming. I'm going to ask you all to save the date for October 10th for our annual Environmental Congress. And so hopefully I'll see many of your faces there. We'll go to the next slide. And this evening, before we go into our program, I just want to let you know that NJPACT's mission really is to be here for you. So at any point in time, we don't get to your questions tonight about NJPACT, or you have a question about something else, feel free to email us at info@njpact.org. I will have that in one of my slides. And I promise you that info@njpact.org will get responded to better than my own email, because I think I'm up to 44,000 unread emails at this point. So it's email is a challenge. Next slide. But please do reach out to us. We've got 12 amazing staff. Again, we can go to the next slide. We are here as your resource. When we find, we've skipped quite a number of slides. NJPACT is here as your resource organization, and when we see commonality of challenge or issue at the local level, we really bring that up to the state level for you. So we are your voice in Trenton. We'll try going to the next slide. That was about slide 15 or 16 that we just saw. So there's a whole lot in front of that slide if we can get to the next one. Things are out of order this evening. And this is tough to jump to the middle of the movie while we're still at the beginning. We'll give that one more shot. We're gonna restart the presentation, folks. So hang on. If we need to, I have the presentation up so I can share my slides if that happens to work better.
Might work better in that maybe when they were ported over, they got jumbled. Sometimes like from
Yeah,
different software
sometimes
versions.
the tech works to our disadvantage. So, Catherine, would you like me to share my slides?
Yeah, let me just switch it over to you for a minute.
Okay.
Again, while we're switching over for the tech, if you have questions at any time, you can use the Q&A feature, and feel free to ask any kind of technical question. I like to call that stump the presenter, but really whatever's on your mind. And sometimes there's simple questions because we'll talk amongst ourselves with acronyms and expect everyone to understand what we're saying, because that's something that we're talking about every single day. Like a PFD, the plan for the day. That's what I wake up in the morning and try to figure out my PFD. But if you're not familiar with that term, you won't know what I'm talking about. So feel free to ask those things too. And we'll make sure as we're going through, we clarify that for you and don't leave you in the dark. That is not the intention whatsoever. And we do our best to move away from the jargon to really make it as understandable as possible for everybody. And again, thank you all for being here, and Jen, for your flexibility now to be in command and control of the PowerPoint
Absolutely.
slides.
No problem. So, and that's a good note on acronyms, Ed. So before I go into the meat of our presentation here, NJPACT REAL is New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threats, Resilient Environment and Landscapes. You can see why we say NJPACT REAL, because you're gonna take an extra deep breath when you want to say the whole name. So if you're not following NJPACT, please do. These are the social media platforms that we are most active on, and we post our trainings on YouTube. So there's a whole bunch over there for you to take a look at. So now let's get into it and talk a little bit about New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threats, Resilient Environment and Landscapes Rule. First and foremost, I want to underscore that these are science-based regulations. They are also a common sense approach to what we know is happening. And so there are a number of things that these NJPACT REAL rules seek to do. And I want to preface this by saying we have already adopted, as of 2023, NJPACT rules for inland areas. So in New Jersey, the way that we regulate our waterways at the state level is broken up in between freshwater and tidal or saltwater. So the inland freshwater regulations were adopted in 2003 regarding flooding, and they are solid, they are science-based, they are common sense. I am thrilled with them. And now what we are looking to do is update for the coast, because those of us New Jerseyans who live at the coast, who vacation at the coast, who invest in the coast, the businesses there deserve the same protections as the freshwater side of the state. And so these regulations are seeking to adjust new development. This has nothing to do with old and existing development. So new development to increasing sea level rise. We are also looking to close some loops in regulations regarding stormwater management, and we're leaning in on what we're calling nature-based solutions. So I'm going to go through that soon. Just a little bit of a primer on the science. These regulations are backed by science that has come from NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, come from the International Panel on Climate Change, and has been distilled by Rutgers to be specific to New Jersey. I have been talking to DEP staff and to Rutgers scientists and our state climatologists about developing regulations like this for about 15 years, because we know that the past is no longer a predictor of the future because of climate change. The storms are becoming more intense and at times more frequent. So we have to adjust our land use regulations based on the climate that is here and the climate that is coming. So in addition to taking into account the melting ice in the Arctic, We are also looking at the impacts of the collapsing Gulf Stream. So the Gulf Stream really has an incredible influence on the weather patterns for the Eastern United States and Western Europe. And with that ocean current starting to collapse, we're seeing strange things happen in weather. We're also seeing strange things happen in migration patterns. So when you look at where bunker, which are bait fish for humpback whales, are migrating to, you're starting to then see changes in where humpback whales are migrating or not migrating and staying around New Jersey in the winter. So these national and international data sets are incorporated and distilled down into the specifics for New Jersey. Just a quick note, I wanted to give you 24 months of what we're looking at in terms of temperature for New Jersey. If you are not regularly checking out our New Jersey State Climatologist website that is housed at Rutgers, yes, we have a New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. David Robinson, and he's fabulous. You should check out their website regularly. So these are snapshots of data, and I have to pull updates every time I give this presentation. We're seeing a lot more red and a lot less blue, and you can see the little comic blurbs on there. We've got third warmest, seventh warmest, second warmest, fifth warmest. We don't get a lot of coldest happening. We're not getting coldest January, coldest February. Those are long in the past now. But what we are seeing on a year by year basis is warmer, hotter, hotter, warmer. So the temperature is increasing, and it's not just for New Jersey, in case you were scratching your head wondering if there was something special about us here. There's a lot special about us here, but not that we're getting hotter. Globally, the temperatures are going up. And this tracks almost exactly to greenhouse gas emissions. If I were to do an overlay of this for you of temperature increase and carbon emissions, you can see the trajectory is not even parallel. They're almost exact when you do the layover. So what does this mean in terms of weather? Well, as we have seen with the flooding this week in New Jersey, and unfortunately we're probably going to see again today, because there's a flash flood warning for about half of the state as we are speaking right now today in mid-July. We are also getting more rain. So we have, this is the past 24 months again, we have these polar opposites that are happening because of our weather, and the extremes are becoming more extreme. So we have too much water, except for when we don't have enough of it. And we just came out of a drought last month that lasted for about 9 months. So it's either really, really wet, and again, you can see 6th wettest, 7th wettest, 3rd wettest, or really, really dry. Last October was the driest month on record, not the driest October, the driest month on record for New Jersey. So the extremes in our climate are becoming more extreme. And Governor Murphy, in his recognition of this in Executive Order 100 in 2020, said we have to get ready for the impacts of climate change as they are affecting New Jersey. And as these extremes are affecting us, we have to develop differently. New Jersey is more than 350 years old as a state, and much of our development predates that. So it was not designed, our businesses, our communities, our residents were not designed in mind with the increasing impacts of the amount of water that is coming into New Jersey. So we adopted NJPACT in July of 2023 for the freshwater areas. NJPACT Real came along in 2024. It was formally proposed August 4th. Now, here's the cliffhanger. This is where the movie gets interesting. We were expecting, and I'm going to get into the details in a minute about what NJPACT Real does. We were expecting these regulations to be adopted by August 4th of 2025. So 2.5 weeks from as we're speaking today. That is not what's happening. On Monday, Governor Murphy announced revisions. Governor Murphy's DEP announced revisions to NJPACT Real that, in my professional opinion and assessment, weaken the rules and provide less protection than the original version of the rules. What we are expecting now is that the anticipated adoption will be sometime around December of 2025. Now that's going to get real tight because we've got a gubernatorial election in early November. And often new administrations ask for consideration from existing administrations with adopting new policies. So this is incredibly tight time frame and it's going to be really challenging. Now, let me be clear, NJPACT Real, if they are adopted as they are going to be proposed on Monday, are better for New Jersey than what we have today on July 16th that we're talking. The proposal that's coming out on Monday, the 21st, is not as strong as the proposal that came out in August. There has been a severe disinformation and misinformation campaign launched by big developers and interests that have been successful in whittling down the protections that are outlined in NJPACT Real. One of the changes between what was proposed in August of 2024 and what's coming out in what's called the New Jersey Register, which is the official publication of proposed regulations in New Jersey. So what's coming out next Monday is a change in how much we see sea level rise impacting New Jersey. So we were saying 5 feet and now it says 4 feet. So that's an order of magnitude difference. It projects forward to the year 2100 and says that as of 2100, we will see in New Jersey an increase of 4 feet of sea level rise. Why the change in 1 foot over a year? Well, there's been a change in the way the International Panel on Climate Change does their assessment of regulations and impact of science. So what we are seeing is they have moved from looking at how much greenhouse gas emissions are we releasing globally? How much is the temperature increasing? To what are the policies of countries who are major contributors to greenhouse gas emissions? The science from the IPCC was done in 2022 under the Biden administration when we were leaning in on renewable energy and we were leaning in on resiliency projects. That's no longer the case. So I think that this is an error in changing the increase from 5 to 4 feet. But it is better than what we have right now. What the standards look like in terms of a map. Now, note this map is based on 5 feet because we got information that these regulations, the proposal was changing on Monday. I don't have a map for 4 feet yet. You got to give me a couple more days, but this gives you a decent idea of what the 5 feet increase would look like. So we call this the CAFE standard, the climate adjusted flood elevation. And so what it will do when we have the 4 feet of added sea level rise is it adds 1% of New Jersey's geography into the coastal floodplain. What we're saying is that when you are proposing to build in these areas, because yes, there are constitutional rights to be able to build, you have to build above where it is going to flood. You cannot create a no build zone. That has been a lie that the developers have put out. What it says is you have to elevate. You have to deal with the increase. I'm not going to go through this detail, but I'm going to include it in my presentation in case we're sending this out. There's also been some misinformation about the statistics. And this made me go back and pull out some of my NJIT stats books to be able to read the statistics right. Essentially what the science says, now pretend that 5.1 feet says 4 feet. What it says is that by the year 2100, there is an 83% chance that we will experience at least 4 feet of sea level rise, at least. So then we're looking at a 17% chance of experiencing more than 4 feet of sea level rise. It's not going to be less, folks. It's just not. It's not capable in the math. So what can you do? Well, you can just go up. You can go up on stilts, and we've all seen this. We saw it after Sandy. Many communities said, okay, we're going to take the FEMA regulations and we're going to go up a couple extra feet because this was bad and we want to be above where the flood elevation is. Let me just say a quick word about flood elevation. I'm talking about sea level rise. So your garden variety, it's going to exist. The ocean will be there, sea level rise by the year 2100. I am not talking about storm surge. When you have a Hurricane Irene or a Superstorm Sandy or Hurricane Henri or an Ida, and we will have them again, the storm surge can be 15, 18, 22, 25 feet. So we are not talking about building above the storm surge. We're talking about your garden variety every day. The ocean is going to be there, sea level rise. So we need to start to transform our communities now to have them ready for 2100. This is another example of what development could look like for climate adjusted sea level rise. The first floor can be dry proofed. So wet proofing is construction standards to allow breakaway walls to allow the water to come in. And you could have breakaway walls on that stilted area here. And you could have a garage. You can't have a bedroom. You can't have a living room. You could have some storage. But you could have wet proofing. So the water can flow through. Dry proofing is you're trying to keep the water out. So you could also have fill, and you could allow for some dry proofing. Now, mind you, these are 1,000 pages of regulations, and Ed told me I got a max of 25 minutes. So I'm doing what I can do here to give you the information. There's a whole lot more detail. Some of you are probably saying, Phil, isn't that going to make things worse? Well, yeah, it is. So there are limitations on that. Here's a biggie of what the rules do. So we're talking about keeping new businesses and new homes out of harm's way, right? You got to go up, you got to go above where the ocean is going to be. Here's another thing these regulations do, and I'm incredibly excited about this. So which probably tells you how much of a nerd I really am. So stormwater management is functionally non-existent for redevelopment projects. Now, again, think New Jersey is one of the 13 original colonies. We've got a lot of old development. Our first comprehensive stormwater regulations were adopted in 2004. So we've got hundreds of years of development that has happened without any stormwater management. So as we redevelop our communities, as we redevelop our strip malls, as we redevelop housing complexes that are no longer in use, we need to then start to incorporate stormwater management into the already built environment as we redevelop it. So these rules will apply not just in coastal areas, but for the whole state of New Jersey, and will require stormwater management for redevelopment in a couple of ways. So one, you have to deal with, this is for my engineers who are out there. So my John Thonets and those who do this work, you have to have water quality treatment. So you have to make the water cleaner running off of the site than it was before redevelopment. Two, you also have to reduce flow rates. So what you're doing is you're catching that first flush. So that water quality storm, which is giving you the bulk of contaminants and pollutants that are running off a site. So the first flush of rainwater that comes off of a parking lot is the dirtiest. And that's what you're treating. We're also going to treat that for volume, and we're going to reduce the rate of flow coming off of the site, so it doesn't rush off so fast and contribute as much to flash floods. So there's going to be a slower release that's required as the water runs off of a site. There's going to be a whole lot more about this once the rules are adopted, and we're going to get into training for engineers. I promise I'm rounding the corner here, Ed. I'm timing myself here. One of the other things that the rules do, and again, this applies to the whole state, not just our coastal areas, but the whole state, is it includes a preference for what we in restoration call nature-based solutions. So I took the exact definition out of the rules here. These are projects that are designed to protect, restore, and enhance shorelines, wetlands, our waterways. We have been asking for a long time as environmentalists for restoration permits that make life easier for us to get through the permitting process, to do things like restore our shorelines, to reconnect to floodplains. So there are great improvements in these regulations in terms of preference for any development moving forward, incorporating nature-based solutions so that we can reconnect our floodplains. Our floodplains, our wetlands really work as our kidneys and our bladders. They hold back water, they filter pollutants, and we really need to pour resources into them. So given that there is a preference for nature-based solutions through development and redevelopment now, should really help us with the restoration of our ecosystem. I am going to blow through a couple things right after this slide, a couple of the facts and myths that are going around about these rules. Here's one of the things that I really don't like that the reproposal announced on Monday does. For affordable housing, these NJPACT real rules that are going to be published in the Register on Monday, July 21st, they reaffirm, and my fear is expand, that any project that includes affordable housing is eligible for a hardship under what's called the compelling public good. First and foremost, I want to say that I and NJPACT absolutely support affordable housing. We believe we need more of it, and we stand firmly that people should be able to live in the communities where they work. We also stand firmly that people who live in affordable housing should be safe. And so allowing for an exemption and having a hardship waiver to develop affordable housing inside of a floodplain puts people who are poor and low income in the riskiest places to live in New Jersey. And that is not just, and it is not equitable. So we have a real problem and a real concern about putting people who are least resilient to recovering to the impacts of flooding and devastation in the areas where they are most at risk for that. So this is something we're really going to be leaning in on and looking for change in the future, because we do not think that this is morally acceptable, and it is not in alignment with the spirit of New Jersey's environmental justice law, which is the first in the nation. We are the first in the nation to adopt an environmental justice law, and this is not in alignment with the spirit and intent of that law. So moving forward, keep your eyes out. NJPACT and LCV and Sierra Club and Watershed Institute and many others will be putting out alerts to weigh in and provide public comment to the NJPACT regulations. Again, they were published in Monday's New Jersey Register that kicks off a 60-day public comment period. There will be one public hearing, the date of which I cannot remember off the top of my head, but I will get it for you, and we can pop that in the chat before I leave today. But keep your eyes out, because those organizations will be moving forward and asking for your input. The comment page looks something like this, so we'll be sending that out to all of you. I am going to skip through if we get to some of these questions in the Q&A, because we're coming at time right now. Just know that there's a whole lot of misinformation out there about everything on these rules, saying, well, the science is low quality. No, that's not true. Low confidence does not mean low quality. So there may be low confidence in the data that you can read in some of the technical reports that Rutgers have put out. That simply means there's not a robust amount of literature projecting the floodplain elevation and sea level rise for New Jersey through the year 2100. You can imagine how that's kind of a niche subject. So there's not a ton of information out there on that. No, the rules do not create no build zones. Absolutely not. We're saying you got to go up. It does not prevent affordable housing. And in fact, the regulation coming out on Monday expands for the ability to develop affordable housing in the floodplain. Again, I've got a real problem with that. Some builders say it's too expensive. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not too expensive. What is expensive is the storm events that New Jersey is experiencing on a regular basis. We have billion-dollar storm events. So I've calculated from 1980 to 2024, if you look at the economic impact of storms hitting New Jersey, that's approximately every 32 weeks, we experience a climate-related event that costs us $1 billion in New Jersey. That's what's too expensive. So with that, I will wrap it up here. I will say thank you to everyone for being here. We do have time for Q&A. NJPACT is a member-supported organization. I see many of our members on here tonight, so thank you for being here and thank you for your support. If you're not a member of NJPACT, please do visit us and consider making a contribution if you are able. We've got a webinar coming up with our partners at Sierra Club. If you're interested in talking about artificial turf, Taylor from Sierra Club is going to be with us on Wednesday, July 23rd. We'll put the registration for that in the chat. And again, this is me, jcoffee@anjac.org. You can email me there, but my email's really clogged up. So if you want to email us at info@anjac.org, I promise you'll get a better response from that. And if it needs to get to me, then my folks will get that email to me. So with that, let me stop sharing and turn it back over to you, Ed. You're on mute, Ed. So that was the very fast version of 1,000 pages of regulations and about 15 years of science. So
No, thank you. It was great. And we appreciate you being here, lending your expertise and your voice. As these rules you said were weakened, that's an issue. And there's a lot of really good questions, but a couple of thoughts that I wanted to have before we transition there is, clearly the rules are critical for us to make New Jersey more resilient and better prepared to face the climate realities that you so clearly demonstrated. And we thank Governor Murphy for recognizing the problem. But we really want to get across the finish line with a set of rules that actually meet the moment, not watered down, I guess pun intended in this case, that are going to put people in danger. And these myths, one of them about cost, I don't know how you put a cost on a life. I mean, it's something that is very dire, but also frustrating. I'm a licensed contractor, 5 foot to 4 foot. The idea of saving money by not going up one more block on your foundation and one more step on the stairs you're already building so that you can save lives doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, there are a lot of details here we need to look at, but it's just ironic that after we experience such catastrophic flooding, or getting some more today, these rules would be rolled out as weakened. And I think it's sort of a message that we should all take very seriously. And strengthening the rules, once again, is something that we should be pushing to do. One particular area that we'll be focusing on is the affordable housing provision. Like you, Jen, I and New Jersey LCV are very concerned about it. Big supporters of affordable housing, but putting people who can afford the least to get out of harm's way, like renting a hotel or, when the storm is coming, time and time again, are going to be put in the greatest shot of losing their life and their whole, family, everything they've worked so hard to accomplish. And that's just the wrong thing to do. And we shouldn't give them a pass, the builders, on these regulations, because they're just looking for a bigger profit margin. And once they build it, they leave. They're not there when the storm comes. The affordable housing family that moves in are the ones that are left. And there's no disclosure that it was built in a way that was not safe. And that's a problem. So you're going to see a link in the chat, as well as a QR code that we're going to pop on the screen, where you can enter one of these links and take an action and send Governor Murphy a message to urge him to strengthen the rules to protect low-income families living in affordable housing from climate disasters of the future. And to us, that's one of the most critical things that we can be doing right now. There are other provisions we're going to work on. So as you guys are taking action on that, we'll leave it up for a second. One question I have for you that sort of came up in all of this is flood insurance. You didn't mention it specifically, but more and more places are not getting flood insurance. Florida, some places in New Jersey, it's getting sky high. Will these new rules somehow require or force people to buy flood insurance if they previously weren't required to get it? Does this touch at all on flood insurance requirements?
yeah, that's a great question, Ed. So flood insurance and regulations do have ties to one another, but they run as separate industries. So the insurance industry is, and the banks are really the ones that are going to require if you have to get insurance. So if you're taking out a mortgage on something and the bank says, you're in a flood zone, we really are going to require you to get flood insurance. Then that's where the requirements come in. What these regulations will do is there's something called a FEMA community rating system that has influence over what the insurance rates are for a community. And so through these regulations, if individual municipalities then adopt the flood maps that reflect the FEMA floodplain plus 4 feet, that's what we're really talking about when I say 4 feet of flood. So we're talking about the FEMA floodplain plus 4 feet plus 1 foot of freeboard is what it is, which is your, giving us a little room to wriggle. If they adopt an ordinance that reflects that floodplain, then yes, that will have an impact on their community rating system insurance rate, which could bring down insurance for their entire community. So they need to do that municipality by municipality, and the DEP has a liaison. And if anybody is interested in the name of that person, the position was just transitioned recently, so I'll have to get you the new name, but they have a person there who is his specific job is to help municipalities with their community rating system and insurance. So DEP is there to help municipalities with this. So these regulations could be beneficial.
And I think we covered these other 2 questions, which were very similar. Flood zones are determined by FEMA, not the DEP. Why do objectors say this extends flood zones? And another question, which was, do you know if these newly proposed regulations, original or newly proposed, the sort of weakened ones, permit for additional discounts in FEMA's community rating system? So I think you covered both those, but a few thoughts about either
so
one.
FEMA sets the floodplain, but what we're talking about, because FEMA is a national organization, right? So they set the floodplain. And what we're saying for New Jersey is we've got better data in looking at the national data sets and distilling that specific to New Jersey, and knowing that we have some low-lying areas, and we've got some areas of New Jersey who are experiencing tectonic plate shifting. And so we're seeing subsidence. So we've got sinking of some areas of New Jersey. And what we can then do is take into account, well, you know what, sea level rise is going to be a little worse for those places that are sinking versus the places that are above sea level at this point in time. And so FEMA, yes, sets the floodplain, but we're saying it's going to be 4 feet above FEMA. So it's FEMA plus 4 is what we're saying for New Jersey.
Okay. Now, these are just clarifying questions. Can you clarify whether these rules will apply inland too, or just coastal areas? And I just want to pre-qualify if I can. There are really like sort of multi-step sets of things in this. There are the coastal rules, which will explain the height and all these different pieces. And then there's the redevelopment section, which applies statewide, including inland. And I think sometimes that confuses people because it's called the coastal package. So maybe you could explain a little bit more about that.
No, you did that exactly right, Ed. So when we're talking about floodplain elevation, in New Jersey, we have freshwater. This might be coming out backwards to you on your screen. So where I am, there's freshwater, think on the western side of New Jersey, towards Philadelphia. And then there's coastal. We all know where the coast is, right? So those systems react differently. So the flooding problems for inland really are precipitation and development driven. And the flooding for coastal is really development driven and sea level rise.
Yeah.
So they have to be managed differently because they don't react the same way. They're not elevating at the same rate. So from flooding, we already took care of the inland flood in 2023, and we increased the level there. What we're doing is increasing the flood level for the coastal communities through this regulation. And there are provisions that apply to the whole state. So stormwater management for redevelopment, no matter where you are in the state, you are required to do that. And the preference for nature-based solutions also applies to the entire state of New Jersey.
So it's a perfect answer. So another question here, does affordable housing waiver include the market rate units that are 4 times the affordable units in the builder's remedy? And the short answer to this is nobody knows. I mean, at the end of the day, it could be 1 affordable unit out of 100,000 units, and that could be considered affordable, or it could be 100% of the units have to be affordable. They have not specified in any way what qualifies. And as we know, and this is why our redevelopment rules don't really currently work, folks find a way to get to the very bare minimum of what they need to get the advantage they're looking for to make as much money as possible. And if that means putting people in harm's way because they can make more money and profit, that's what they're going to do. And this wiggle room here is your question is very specific, whoever wrote it. The answer is totally no one has said and no one knows, and they'll like kick it down the road, and lobbyists with cufflinks and really expensive shore homes are going to be descending on the Department of Environmental Protection and the new administration and trying to make it as advantageous for them to build under less stringent rules as many places as possible. And most of the housing that's going to be developed is going to be affordable, right? I mean, I shouldn't say all, but lots of it will qualify. And if they can have one unit be affordable to waive protective rules, they're going to do it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's a real problem with this, because then you are potentially getting a lot more development in the floodplain. So you may be putting people with a higher income, so a moderate to wealthy income in the floodplain, but then you are also talking about more development and more impervious cover, which makes flooding worse. So it is a compounding problem. And we right away saw, when we got a briefing from the DEP on Tuesday about what's coming on Monday, we saw that this is a problem. And we're going to need changes to these regulations, and we're not going to stop fighting for it. I've been working on this for 15 years. The problem 15 years ago was we didn't have computers that were strong enough to analyze the data that we needed to get the information to build these rules. So we're going to keep fighting for these regulations and for improvements. The way it's written is an improvement over what we're at now, but it's still not good enough.
There is a question about that, like how much can these rules change? But I want to ask this other clarifying question before, which is, all right, for new development with the 4-foot standard, habitats will be destroyed anyway. So there's really no environmental benefit, according to the person who wrote this question, to keeping the 5-foot standard. It's just a greater risk to the developed structure. And I would add, this isn't here, the people who live there and the first responders who wouldn't necessarily need to go. But so far as environmental concern goes, does it really matter what the height?
Yeah, that's a great question. I see that's from my friend Emil. Emil, I love you, and thank you for putting that forward. From an environmental standpoint, it really is minimal impact, but it really is about the people who live there and who will be stranded and the emergency responders. So my friend Bill Kibler, who could not join us here tonight, is also an emergency responder. He was fire chief in his community for years. And I have stood shoulder to shoulder with him at more press conferences than I can count, where he will attest that at this point in his career, he has rescued more people from water and from floods than he has from fires. And so putting our emergency responders at risk, putting individuals who are stuck in these homes at risk, and they won't know it. They won't know that they're buying in a floodplain because the structure hasn't previously been flooded, because it hasn't been built before. So they don't have to be noticed. And it's compounding a problem that we already have in New Jersey. Environmentally, yeah, there are areas on the shore that are just going to flood from sea level. There's great work being done by the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary and the American Littoral Society and others that are looking at deposition in coastal wetlands, so building up the wetlands so it can be more resilient to sea level rise, and figuring out how to best to do that. The thing is, you can't just dump 3 feet of soil and expect the wetland to survive. It's a slow process of building up over time, so the plants can go through it and the root structures can get deeper. But yeah, we're going to lose a lot of habitat.
And there's one more sort of clarifying question. I think we answered this, but a question about affordable housing. So the original proposed regulations make flood insurance much more affordable for housing than eliminating them. And that insurance, without construction specifics of the original proposal, will make insurance unattainable for many due to the costs, or even unavailable, as I had mentioned. It's more like a statement than a question, but if there's anything else you want to add on that piece.
No, insurance is going to get more expensive for people who live in floodplains. That's just how it is. And as you said, Ed, in Florida, we've already seen insurance companies say we're out. It's gotten too expensive. We can't keep up with the demand. You can't raise the rates high enough to cover all of the impact. And so insurance is going to become a problem as we continue to develop in the floodplains. Going up is going to help. And again, when you're up, that first floor, it could be storage, it could be a garage, can't be a living room, can't be a bedroom. So the idea is that you don't want to trap people in that first floor. You want people to be up and above the regular garden variety sea level rise. Again, we're talking about regular, predictable sea level rise. We're not talking about a storm surge, which can be 15, 18, 20, 25 feet.
Awesome. So then we get into the action. I mean, folks are already asking these sort of questions. So there's like a whole group here around there. Is there a chance for the state to restore the rules as they were before they were weakened? Is there a chance the EP would withdraw the revised regulations and strengthen the proposal? If we could advocate for substantial revisions, then we would have to repropose them and we'll never get it done before the next governor. Could that be a good thing? Maybe the new governor won't be beholden to the builders lobby, but they could also be worse. What are the odds? Who's sort of the bookie here?
Yeah, just
Oh.
jumping in there, in my experience in going through multiple administration changes at the gubernatorial level, it takes a new administration a solid year to start to understand these really complicated issues. All the commissioners, all the assistant commissioners at agencies change. So you've got a lot of new bodies. You've got people like me and Ed who have got to have repeat meetings with these folks to get them to understand why we need this. Then they've got builders and developers in the other ear saying why they don't need this. So we got to play that fight out. My best advice is we push real hard to get the rules adopted that are being proposed on Monday, because they are better. They get us those redevelopment standards. So we start to manage stormwater and address the runoff and the volume flooding issues that are causing flash flooding. So we start to address that. That's going to help everybody. We start to get nature-based solutions. That helps our environment. We start to get some elevation. Yes, there's a hardship waiver for affordable housing, but it's not a by right, pass, go, collect $200. There are requirements in there. And so elevation is still an option. Managing the floodwater in another way, which quite frankly is just going to be too expensive from an engineering perspective, is another option. So it does get some improvement. And then we take another bite at the apple after these regulations are adopted. So I wouldn't throw the whole thing out right now. I'd say, you know, for those who are into football, move the ball, move it down the field, make progress, and then go back and do it again. And we'll have even better data in the future.
And I'm with you there 100%. And there are, you know, substantive changes that would start this all over again. And then there are technical corrections where maybe the words were left in a way that were jumbled and we want to see something specific and clarify. And we're going to push to make these as strong as possible in every way possible so that they can protect people as soon as possible. There's a lot of possible. So people are asking, what can I do? Like, where can I go? How can I show up? What public meetings can I attend? We already talked about submitting comments. Once Monday happens and it's released, there'll be 60 days and we'll be blasting those out there. And you can look at the DEP website if you want to get right on that as well. You know, how can people be more involved as a community member or within their own career? And that's probably where we'll end. There was a few more clarifying questions, but I think we got most of them. Like, where do we go from here to make these rules as strong as possible, as soon as possible?
You look for the action alerts that are going to be coming out from LCV, NJPACT, Sierra Club, Watershed Institute, and others. So we all work with one another. We know each other. We're friends. We're colleagues. We pool our resources, and so we will all be sending out action alerts. These regulations come out on Monday. So there are a number of us who are going to quickly go through them and try to absorb them. And then we will rally around and meet next week, and we'll be sending out action alerts shortly after that. And so we will provide some guidance on comments. In general, it's going to be adopt these now, and preferably as soon as possible, because once you have a new governor elect, then the politics gets funky. So we need to adopt these as soon as possible and fix the affordable housing provision.
That's right.
That's going to be the bottom line. And what fix the affordable housing provision looks like really depends on what the language exactly says on Monday when it comes out. So you got to give us a beat to figure that out, but we will, and we'll do it quickly.
And so I just want to say thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors, to NJPACT, Jen, amazing work, appreciate it. To the Highlands Coalition, Highlands Preservation Alliance, New Jersey Sustainable Business Network, Water Spirit, Sierra Club, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, the Watershed Institute, and listed twice, another one. So I'm not going to do it twice because I noticed. And all of you for everything that you do every single day. Please stay engaged. Continue to advocate for the change that you want to see in the world, and we'll make the world and our communities more protected together by working together. And, you know, this was a really great opportunity to have a 1-hour discussion. There's obviously a lot more that we can look into it. We all remain available to ask questions and work and support you in your local efforts. And, you know, we're going to be able to accomplish more. We've just got some challenges ahead of us. The weakening was not a good day, but we brush it off and we move forward and we make our case. And that's what your engagement helps us to do. So thank you for being here, for giving up your time. Jen, again, for your partnership and your great presentation this evening. And everyone have a great night. Stay safe and dry.
Yeah, stay safe because we're likely going to get more flooding today. So be safe. Take care. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for being such a good partner. It's great to see you.
Back at you. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.